Welcome to the Free to Be Free portal, where we cheer you on for your most empowered and exquisite lives. I'm Julia Ananda, your host for the day, with my good friend Margaret Miller. And we're here today to talk about the energy insights for the week, helping you to find your own alignment, find your own roots in your life so that you can have the highest level of self-esteem by combining the discernment of your analytical mind and the wisdom of your heart, bringing the intuition through you, and then radiating your highest self-expression into the world. My good friend Margaret Miller is here today to bring the insights through for us for the week through the symbology of the gene keys and the Sabian symbols and her own intuition. Margaret, I'm so happy to be here with you today. Thank you for being here. And please help us understand the energy insights for this week.
Wonderful, Julia, and thank you for that beautiful beginning. It really spoke to me because that really is what we're here to do, is to help people to come into that really powerful alignment. And so I want, before I go into the gene key of the week and the Sabian symbols, um, I just wanted to remind people that, you know, I may be talking a lot about a particular gene key or about the Sabian symbols, but you don't have to remember all of that in order to make use of this. Just relax and just have an open mind and an open heart, and you really, something may really resonate with you, and you can take that one little piece out into your week and apply it and have some pretty magical results. Like, you know, I look at every Sabian symbol and every gene key because that's my passion. That's my passion, and I know that it isn't everybody's, but hopefully you'll be able to hear something that really resonates and that you'll find helpful. So I just wanted to say that to begin. So this week, and start this with, this will be starting on April 28th. We move into out of the 27th gene key, which had the gift of altruism, if you remember, and then into the 24th gene key, which has the shadow of addiction, the gift of invention, and the siddhi of silence. And this is one of those gene keys where I've noticed, when people come across this in their own profiles, the 24th gene key and the shadow of addiction, it's a difficult one because it sounds bad. I mean, a lot of the shadows do, but it doesn't sound good. It's like, oh no, I'm not an addict. I'm not this or that. But really, we all have all of the gene keys because we all have all of the 64 genes and we've talked about that before. And we all have addictions. So it can be the sort of the major kinds of addictions that we think about, that automatically come to mind when we think about addiction, like addictions to substances, alcohol or drugs or pharmaceuticals or whatever it is. Now it's our phones and our computers and our texting or our social media or whatever it is. But it's also addictive thought patterns, habitual thought patterns, ways of being, ways of reacting to things that we can't seem to stop doing, anything that we can't seem to stop. And it's it's so human of us to have these addictive patterns, right? It's so much a part of the human condition. And so right away, even as I'm starting to talk about the 24th gene key, I want to just encourage you to have a little bit of self-compassion. If you're deep in the midst of dealing with some kind of addiction that you're aware of, good for you to have the awareness, right? Good for you to even have the awareness. Even if you can't seem to stop the pattern yet, it's a beautiful thing that you have the awareness. So, so, and it's, coming back to that idea that it's part of the human condition. We are, there is in this life a plenitude of suffering, and we suffer because of our anxiety about the unknown. We suffer about, the fear of the future. We suffer because of the fear of death. We suffer because of our fears. And 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 the addictive patterns are an attempt, a beautiful attempt by our minds to alleviate that suffering. And the reason why it turns into addictive patterns or repetitive patterns is because even just a moment of relief from suffering is a moment of relief from suffering. you know and so we will keep going back to that, even though after a while we recognize, hopefully we recognize in our life, oh, that is actually isn't helping me. In some cases it might be really actually doing quite a bit of harm. And this shadow uh, is very, very powerful, but it's doing something very important in our evolutionary process, and that is um, creating the impetus for change, because at some point we become desperate. We recognize that we are doing something over and over again, you know doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for different results. But we understand that that's not going to work, and so then we will begin to look for something else. And so when we I guess so in order to move from the shadow of addiction to the gift of invention, we'll talk about what that is in just a moment, but in order to shift into that, we first have to become aware of that pattern. And so for this week, as we move into this, the energy of this gene key, and there are probably thousands of people, involved in the gene keys who will be contemplating this shadow of addiction. So we and the gift of invention and the siddhi of silence. And so we can join in with that sort of collective energy and look compassionately and honestly for ourselves. Nobody else needs to know, right, what those patterns are, but just be honest about it, and notice. Maybe even just make a commitment to ourselves to notice when we go into any kind of an addictive pattern, and or an addictive thought process, like, oh, right, that person just said this, and so I'm going to make it all about me. That's an addictive pattern. I'm going to take it personally and I'm going to make it all about myself. That's a simple addictive pattern that a lot of people have, right? To take things way too personally. um, or something like, uh, I can't get I can't actually start my day without my coffee, right? Just notice. You don't even need to change it on the first day. Just notice when it happens, and like, oh, look, there is that addictive pattern. And that in itself creates a little bit of a pause, a little bit of a gap. And this is one of the things that Richard Rudd talks about a lot in this particular gene key, is that it is the gaps, or the periods of silence, sort of deafening silence, or not knowing what's going to happen next, that actually are the cause of us to reach for that addictive substance or pattern. But they're also the way through it. It's also the way through it to the other side. If we can just be there with the discomfort for a few moments, something magical can happen. And we can come into this new awareness, or from out of that pause, that gap. It could be short or it could be long, that gap. If we can stay with the discomfort of that, our being and our consciousness will guide us to a new choice, a new way of responding. And this is something that I think is so valuable, and is, it's part of self-empowerment, is trusting that if we can stay with our discomfort and notice it, and give it space to exist, that just that compassionate action of giving it a moment, giving it a little bit of attention, and maybe some curiosity, that it will, our being will know what to do with it, and know how to move through it. And that's where the invention happens. Like, this is, I mean, and you see it in creative people, in the geniuses, of this world. And um, part of the whole Gene Keys philosophy is that, the genius is in everyone. It's not reserved for people of a certain IQ, right? It's a natural gift that all of us have. And it's through those pauses, those gaps, where we come, like you mentioned, the intellect, and the mental intelligence, as well as combining with the heart intelligence, and that mix together, and coming into our heart center, allows that genius to come forth. It's not in our moments of deep analytical thinking that genius appears. It's in the pauses, it's in the gaps in between. You take a break and you go take a shower or something, and then, the light bulb goes on. Eureka, I've got it. I found it. And so invention is this quality. It's not a skill. It's not inventiveness. It's invention. It's like, it comes out of those gaps and it causes something to shift in us. And, I think about that in terms of my own, one of my addictions, uh, I had an addiction to cigarettes. I smoked cigarettes for a very long time. And, and I didn't know how. I'd even stopped for several years at one point and then started again. And, and I finally heard something, and I think I had read a book, or I don't know where exactly it came from, but they but someone said basically the way to stop smoking cigarettes is never pick one up again. Never touch a pack of cigarettes again. And well, obviously, I mean, that sounds horrible to somebody who's trying to quit smoking, because it's like, well, that's easy enough for you to say. And it's, but just the idea of it, the simplicity of that statement caused something inside of me. It was an epiphany, and it was like, that's it. That's it. Don't ever pick one up again. Don't touch a pack of cigarettes. Don't touch it. If I don't touch it, I can't bring it to my mouth. and and did I still go through withdrawals? Did I still have to go through the process? Yes, but there was this whole gap, this pause that happened that allowed me to, okay, and so instead of picking that up, what am I going to do? I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take half a dozen nice, slow, deep breaths, or I'm going to go for a walk. And I just started inventing different things, and I just did it, like you have to do, a day at a time or a moment at a time, like, because cigarettes could be, you know multiple times throughout a day, and so can our addictive thought patterns. But if we just, when we notice it, the moment that we notice it, take that pause and say, I'm going to do something different. So you have to notice it first, and then I'm going to do something different, and allow that pause to give us the space for something new, a new invention to come in. And it's not just the invention of a different pattern that could occur in these states. It is true invention. Like, something really, really creative can come out of giving the shadow enough space and embracing it as part of our humanity, and choosing not to indulge in it at the same time. So then moving into the siddhi, to talk about the siddhi, the enlightenment of this, is the silence that occurs when that addictive pattern, when that craving, or that need, or that seeming need to alleviate that anxiety or the suffering, or whatever it is, drops away. And it drops away once we have really truly accepted our humanness, and and made a choice to do something different than that particular addictive pattern. And you've touched it, because the silence is internal. It's the quieting, the silencing of the mind. It doesn't mean that there's no sound in there. because at least for me, when I have reached those states, there's like tones. There's like what I always refer to as the music of the spheres, right? And there could be tones, or there could be like a buzzing, like you could feel your cells or hear your cells vibrating. And there is peace. You feel peace. And so yeah, this is a very, very powerful gene key. And one of the tools that is in the gene keys for contemplation of each gene key is to embrace the shadow, release the gift, and embody the siddhi. Okay, so you embrace the shadow, like I was just talking about, and then release the gift, like do something different, or whatever that gift is. The gift of altruism, do something altruistic. The gift of of invention, allow that gap to show you a new way, and act upon it, right? And then embody the siddhi. How do we embody those siddhis? We just imagine it. What does it feel like to have that silence inside?
You've helped me to feel sort of the state of each of these, that that sort of need or fixing of myself in addiction, and then moving into that shift and that change in invention, and maybe even the chaos of bringing it through or doing, and then the silence feels so different. It feels like such a contrast to the need or the doing. The silence feels so peaceful compared to the other two states.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very different state. The siddhic state is very different from the shadow or the gift, in that, I mean, it's a quantum leap, and it doesn't necessarily happen automatically, right? You don't automatically, it's not necessarily step by step. You could go straight from addiction to silence. You could, I who knows when it's going to happen. Right. And yeah, I like that you said that. And the cities are that way. They're not, they can't be. How do you talk about silence? Right. That's sort of the joke with it. uh if you listened to Richard Rudd talk about this gene key, I mean, that's the joke. It's like, how do you talk about silence? You know, how do you talk about some of these states without, this, I don't know.
It's that
Almost can't.
real felt sense of experience, right?
Yeah.
In each of them.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. And so now I'd like to look at the Sabian symbols. And again, there's 6 Sabian symbols that are associated with this 24th gene key. And the first one is Taurus, 9 degrees of Taurus. Okay, so we ended up last time with 8 degrees of Taurus at the new moon, right? And that was a sleigh on ground uncovered by snow, right? And so it was sort of like this planning for the future, or trusting and having a positive outlook that the future is going to work out, right? And that the snow will be provided and the sleigh will be able to be able to cruise across the snow. And so the symbols that correspond with this 9 degrees of Taurus is actually a Christmas tree decorated. It's really interesting that we had the snow, the sleigh without snow, and then the next symbol is a Christmas tree decorated in April, but that's okay. It's just a symbol. And it's basically another promise, right? It's a promise that that the outer life is going to offer up its gifts to us in some way, and that that we can, that humans can obtain this sort of immortality in a way through selfless giving. And it's also a reminder that of the sort of the opposite of that, where we can really taint the giving and the spiritual meaning of things by our expectations of something materialistic to come out of it. And so it's really, I think it's quite a beautiful symbol. And you'll see through all of these that it does have this, you can see how addiction could be in there, like expecting the expectation of the Christmas gifts, or having people expect you to give something in return if you give something, giving with expectations. And we're coming out of the gene key, we're just coming off of the gene key that's altruism, right? And so that giving without expectation. And then here's this symbol of the Christmas tree. And then it's also a symbol that says something about sharing our gifts out into the world, reminding us to share our gifts out into the world. And Taurus is very much about that. It's about our gifts and our talents and our resources, and what gives us sustenance, right? And how we can cause that to happen. And so then, and so then this 10 degrees of Taurus is a Red Cross nurse hurries on an errand of mercy. Okay, so very different symbol again. And so this is talking about an authentic pouring out of the self in service to the whole, right? And oh, this is the second time this word has come up. I peeked down at my notes because to remind me, and it has the energy of agape. It's really interesting because it has the sort of the Christ energy, because it's being of service of the whole self to all of humanity. And of course we can't always obtain that, right? But that's sort of the feeling. It's like devotion of the self to something, to some worthwhile cause, right? And so in doing that, losing all sense of separateness. And so there is this pathway of invention right? Because this is, I mean, really, truly, in order for us to move out of an addictive pattern, we have to do something different. And a lot of times, even if our addictive pattern is something as that we can't help at all, like grief, like we've been in the pattern of grief for whatever period of time, short or long, and we need to break free in order to, you know, for our health not to deteriorate. You have to have the breakthrough at some point. And a lot of times it is about going and doing something and being of service, right? And doing something that has nothing to do with yourself, so that you can lose that and lose the focus on that thing that you're grieving, or that person that you're grieving, or whatever it is, and focus on someone else's needs. So I think it's a really beautiful symbol for that. So, and it requires, in order for us to move through these things, it requires us going into the dark places. So you think about the Red Cross nurse, she's working in areas that, I mean, it could be war torn, it could be, it's going into the deep dark places and helping people who are in dire need, right? It's not just, and so you can take it all metaphorically, right? You can go into the deep dark places in your own being, in your own life, and and help yourself, go on an errand of mercy for your own life. Right? And and do that by helping others, right? And it's a beautiful symbol. So then let's see, Taurus 11, a woman watering flowers in her garden. So a beautiful symbol for springtime. Um, and the keyword that Dane Rudyard uses here, or the keywords that he uses, are the development of a higher consciousness, development of the powers of the mind and the consciousness. And I would say it's also that the development, watering the garden of the heart as well, right? Cultivation is sort of the key word that I would use, and that's cultivation of our higher consciousness. And so tending that garden and nurturing and giving the the new space to grow by pulling the weeds. And the pulling the weeds, we can also relate to, pulling those addictive patterns, and really recognizing that they probably served their purpose, and now they can become compost. Right? Now they can become compost and help feed the garden in a different way. And so cultivating what we want more than what we truly want from the heart level, rather than what we seem to be craving. So then Taurus 12, and remember, this is one per day. It changes, every day. And so this is a young couple window shopping, Taurus 12. And so again, it's our fascination with the outer world and the materialism and material, satisfying our material needs is important, right? That's a thing that we need to do. But then there's this socialization of well, what about, I might be seen as better if I had this, or if I wore this kind of clothes, or if I, like our neighbors just got this thing, and I'd sure like that for our house, and or whatever it is, that window shopping, looking to the outer world for something to uplift us. And so and so recognizing that that only works at a very superficial level after a while, right? I mean, there are things that we need and things that beautify and things that do give us joy, but that literally we having more possessions doesn't necessarily make us better people and it doesn't necessarily make our lives easier, right? And so finding the balance of that's what that symbol is talking about.
I heard a phrase today from Belinda Womack about nurturing your inner child with, the heart-centered alignment and the sacred, and then also finding the balance in giving your ego enough of the material world that it can feel safe. And sort of reminded me of the picture that you're painting for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful, right? Because there is this there are requirements, and there's nothing wrong with treating ourselves well, right? There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's not about right or wrong in that. It's just that it's not necessarily, at a certain point, it's not necessarily going to um, have the desired result when it's coming from sort of that shadow of addiction. I like that because that's true. We do have to feel safe in order for us to respond to life optimally. We do have to have that feeling of safety. Yeah. So then 13 Taurus is a man handling heavy baggage. And it really speaks to this same thing. It's like the baggage. What do we carry around from place to place? It's like acquiring things and then having to like self-mobilization, moving ourselves around in suitcases, like handling baggage is like moving ourselves around, being able to move in this world and to offer what we have to offer. We've got to take things with us. We've got to be able to you know but we have to be able to handle our possessions, right? And we have to, how much can we take with us? Well, in the end, we don't take anything with us in the very end. And and so this is another symbol that's talking about acquiring the things that are going to be of the most use and the most value to us, and being able to move, still being able to move and be adaptable and change, uh, and finding that balance. Okay. And so ultimately, we are anything that we're taking with us, we are really, we're really wanting to express our vitality. Like when you pack clothes for a vacation or you pack clothes for a business trip, you pack particular things that are going to make you feel or help you to feel whatever that desired feeling is, right? And so really we're what we really want to do is express our vitality out in the world. And I'm I'm thinking of a story. I'm gonna finish the last Sabian symbol, and then maybe come back to this idea of the man carrying heavy baggage, and because also we talk about that, right? Oh, I've got a lot of baggage, or she's got a lot of baggage, right? And we think of that in sort of as a really sort of a negative expression. Anyway, so the next one is 14 degrees of Taurus. This is a very beautiful and strange symbol. On the beach, children play while shellfish grope at the edge of the water. Okay. And it is the keynote to this is returning to the simpler joys for revitalization. Okay. Returning to the simpler joys. So the children playing on the beach for revitalization, and finding the balance between work and play is really quite, you can kind of feel it in everything that we've talked about so far, right? Because it, what is it? All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, right? And so it's like finding that balance, and but also it's this symbol to me is this symbol of that gap, the gap between the space between worlds, or the transition point from the ocean to the beach, right? That the shellfish are right at the edge of that, and the children are playing right at the edge of that, and they're not necessarily really mixing too much, but there's this important energy of that transition, and it's sort of it's got the magic to it for me of a sunrise or a sunset, that gap between uh the dawn and the new day, and the gap between the dusk and darkness. It's very, very powerful symbol, and so utilizing that to sort of feel into the silence. Yeah. So I like that one very much. And so it's also saying, sort of being in the world but not of it, or having that balance between the spiritual and the material, having the balance between the physical and the etheric. Yeah.
And you said the simpler joys in life, you know, as projected in this symbol. And it reminded me of the man handling the heavy baggage, and those of us who are weighed down by our possessions or our addictions. It's those simpler joys in life that are balancing that out, or that can help us get there to that silence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can't necessarily take the whole beach with you, although some of us have tried, with our seashell collections and various things. But yeah, that those that that it's there when it's there, and you enjoy it when it's there, and then when it's gone, it's when you're away from it, it's just in your heart. So just feeling into this, how can we look for those places where we are um, having those addictive patterns, and how can we be, a little bit more aware, like pay attention, just pay attention to it, but do it in a compassionate way. This is something that I always, I really like to stress and emphasize with people, is for them to really be gentle, when you're looking at the shadows in anything, because we look at shadows in a different way. When I look at somebody's astrology chart, or we look at these Sabian symbols, there's sort of shadow frequencies in all of these things, and it's really important to be honest and to look at them, but to not go into beat up, or to self deprivation, self depreciation, because it really, that's another addictive pattern that is just not helpful at all. And so I always just encourage you to just be curious, and to look for those patterns and get excited, even like even if you kind of fake it at first, like, oh, look, there I am doing that addictive pattern again. Woohoo, like it's just bring it into the awareness and know that that is powerful action. And then, as you're going through the week, think if there is one thing this week, one small thing. Don't take on the big one right away, the biggest one if you're not ready for it, you know, but take on some small pattern that you really would like to change, and notice it and feel into the energy of that discomfort, and see if something comes up, some idea or some epiphany happens that says, try this instead. It might happen, and then do that. And if you can't do it every time, so what? How many times does it take? How much time does it take to break a pattern? Well, it depends on how long that pattern's been in place. So it might take a lot of repetition for it to be changed into something different. And then, I have this idea of this quote, but I'm not being able to pull it up, but it has to do with when we, think a thought, uh, think a thought, build an build an action, you repeat the action, build a habit, um, and it ends up with, you end up building your destiny, right? Build a habit, build a something. I don't remember the whole thing, sorry, but it really is a progressive kind of a process. And we can, even if we end up replacing one addictive pattern sort of with another, uh hopefully it's one that is better for us, like I'm pretty much addicted to my weekly cold plunge now, but I feel like that's a really good addiction to have for me. It's not for everybody, but for me it is. And so that's one way of looking at that. And then take those moments for the silence to imagine even what that silence feels like inside, and or what it would feel like, or what it has felt like when you've had those moments, and bring those back. Because if you've experienced it once, you can bring it back into awareness. I was going to go somewhere else with that, but I'm not really sure where it was now. So
Well, you had teased us with a story
oh, about the
that came
baggage.
about the baggage.
Okay, well, yes. Okay, so one day I was sitting in a restaurant with several friends who were going through a very, very, very difficult point in their life, and they were not being able to sort it out at all. And it really had to do, it had, well, that the situation had to do with trying to get it together to move out of a house that they'd lived in for a very long time. And but there was some deep problems happening in the relationship as well. And so it was just a very, very tumultuous time, and I was just sitting there listening and trying to be of support to them, and they started complaining about each other in a way, and I said, we all have these things that we're dealing with. And I can see, you guys, you both of you are wanting to make this move. And it's really going to be important that you simplify and that you clean things out, and that you, as I was aware of how much they had collected, and that it wasn't working for either of them. And so I was sort of having this conversation about, you don't want to carry, you're going to, even the move isn't going to solve this, but if you can simplify as much as you can on the physical plane, it's going to make all of the rest of it a little bit easier. Right? So I'm having this conversation. I look out the window of the restaurant, and down this main street of the town is this man carry hauling behind him a luggage cart from like an airport, and it's full of all of his belongings. It was a street person with all of his belongings on an actual luggage cart. And I tapped my friend on the shoulder and I said, look out the window.
Wow. I love receiving messages from the plant world and the animal world, but we get these images that come through or animals that we see. But to look out the window and see this human image of the exact lesson,
Oh,
it's pretty good. Their
yeah,
angels were helping in that
absolutely.
conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, you can't make this stuff up, right? Oh, so I guess I'd like to just have a little conversation with you about some ideas for putting this into practice this week. If you have anything you'd like to share of things that came up for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that kept coming up that shocked me every time you said it was that um, if I notice an addictive pattern that I'm either in the middle of or that's coming on, and I just notice that there might be a spark of wisdom, a hint, a spark of genius that comes through. And that is really awesome, but hard for me. I think that when I notice an addictive pattern that I'm having, then I'm sort of fighting it. And I might be able to choose something else, but I'm still fighting it. And so I'm not in that open receiving place in that moment. So I think I'd like to learn more about that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't necessarily happen automatically. You have to have a really clear intention to pay attention to and notice. I am going to notice, and that's why I say take something that's fairly easy for you, a pattern that you want to change, and make the intention. First of all, I think it's always important. Make the intention that I'm going to change this pattern. I'm going to work on changing this pattern this week. And I'm going to notice as often as I can, as many times as I can throughout the day, when I am reaching for that thing or I am doing that pattern. And I'm going to just first just take a moment and celebrate the fact that I noticed it, the fact that it's conscious, right? Because we can't change anything if we're not conscious of it. We can't, there's no way for us to change anything if we're not conscious of it. And so then when we do notice it, and we've done that a couple of times and we've celebrated that a few times, then stop what you're doing. And you can be in judgment, you can be in whatever state you're in with it. But if you can, stop and take a couple of breaths before you make any choice, right? Just give yourself that small gap. Actually, I want to back up a little bit with this because, first of all, when you start noticing it, you're going to notice it a lot, and you're going to kind of be in shock at how much you're doing that addictive pattern, because it's amazing how many times in a day we'll do that same pattern. And so, but that awareness is going to be very, very helpful. So know that there can be some additional discomfort that happens as you notice how much you're doing that pattern that you don't like, right? And so, and be with that, and just notice, notice, oh, I'm struggling with that, I don't like this, I'm trying to fight it. Okay. And then at some point you're going to be able to say, okay, take a breath. Actually take 3 breaths, give yourself at least 3 breaths. Or even, I'm going to give myself 2 minutes right now to just stop and not do anything. I'm not going to reach for it. I'm not going to, I've always had to sort of talk myself through it in a way. It's okay. I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to take those breaths. Is it still there? Is that feeling, is that urge to do that thing still there? Or has it shifted? If it shifted, okay, go on with my day. It hasn't shifted, I have a choice to make. Right? And if I do that, if I go right back into that pattern, oh well, maybe I'll notice it again, and maybe I won't. So I don't think it's instantaneous necessarily. It takes a little bit of work, but it'll happen faster than you. If you pay attention, you're halfway there. And so this is the teaching of mindfulness, right? Is doing things mindfully. Well, we find out just how not mindful we are, right? By practicing mindfulness, right? We understand that we are very easily distracted, and this is a chronic condition in our society. It's a very, very, very difficult problem. I had a lot of varies there. So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
you've given me really something very important to me, and I hope that this helps our listeners too. Yeah, I do have a good practice of noticing these patterns and then making a decision as to whether I'm going to carry forward or make a better choice. But the piece that you've added here and that I'm going to practice this week is then listening and asking for that spark of something new, something genius to fill the space where that addiction used to sit, the addiction that I'm actively releasing by this practice of noticing and making a choice and breathing. But I've never before then said, I'm open to receive the gift of wisdom, genius, spark of vitality that wants to come through and fill that space, the space of time and energy that addiction has taken up, that I'm now releasing. So I really appreciate that insight. And that's what I'm going to carry forward to practice this week.
Beautiful. I love that. Yeah. And along with that, if if nothing comes in, allow, and that can be very beautiful too, because it may be saying, it's okay to be with this emptiness. And can I even just practice being with the emptiness? And can I go around with this emptiness for a little while? And I think that when we either way, we get to a point where we are acting more mindfully and that we're making our choices more consciously and more gently and more compassionately, because I think this is one of the beautiful gifts of looking at our any kind of symbology, the gene keys, the Sabian symbols, our astrology, numerology, whatever it is, tarot, whatever symbology we're looking towards. We can The important part is to take whatever you take from it, make it your own. It symbolizes whatever it means to you, and and then act upon it in your life, because there's no two people that are going to see that gene key the same way, or any of those Sabian symbols the same way, right? And we don't have the same perspectives, and so I just think it's such a valuable tool. And it's been, that contemplation and that giving the space for something new to come in, and trusting that, because we all have the guidance, we all have that available to us, but a lot of times we don't pause long enough to hear it. We don't allow that emptiness or that stillness to be there, so that we can hear it, because it does feel uncomfortable. I used to say to all my clients, when they'd come into my office, especially for the first time, I was like, I would tease them. I'd say, fasten your seatbelts, honey, because you're in for a ride. First of all, I'd say that. And then I'd say, uh, we're going to practice getting comfortable being uncomfortable. Yeah.
Oh, Margaret, this has been such a rich conversation today. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. Yeah, I loved it.
Me
Juicy.
too. Wow, I'm so glad that we made the space for all of this beautiful wisdom and alignment to come through.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am too.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
Yeah. And to our viewers, please put in the comments what you're going to practice this week and what you took for your own life from these symbols. This has been the Free to Be Free portal. Please like and subscribe to join us for more videos. And our next video will be the energetic recalibration for the week. Thank you.